Okay, today's video is going to cover spring trail conditions. And what we're on right now is a packed down snow trail. It's pretty much down to its base layer of ice. A mixture of ice and snow. There's a little bit of loose snow right here on top. Because 4 or 5 days ago we had a little storm that came through and dropped an inch of snow. And there hasn't been much traffic on this trail since, so there's a little bit of loose stuff. So this is pretty solid, icy, frozen snow, and that's called stable monorail. And you can see along the side there's still some, that's about between a foot and 2 feet of the snowpack that's built up, and that gets no traffic at all over there. And then on this side you can see that it's all melted off, and you've got the forest floor with the leaves on it there. So that area obviously gets a lot more sun. This area here, see, there's a stand of trees over there. And so those trees block the sun from getting into this area here. Now, in the winter, now that it's spring, the sun's starting to get up over there. In a week or two, that snow will be gone. You can see the sunshine. So we're on this stable monorail, and we'll go down the trail a little bit, and maybe we can find some other footing types. So as that monorail warms up to get some more sun or higher temperatures, it gets thinner and thinner, and it will start to break away when you have weight on it. Sometimes around the edges, sometimes in the middle. It'll be very uneven. You'll have some weak spots, and that's called unstable monorail. And that's where you have to be careful about breaking through. And then along the side of the trail here, again where it gets some sun, this is pretty firm. This dirt is a little moist, but it's, here we go. Here's a good example. So then when the monorail starts to disintegrate, you can see the broken spots here. See where the monorail is broken off because somebody stepped on it, or just fall from its own weight. And then underneath is frozen mud. And that mud starts to thaw out. So when it's frozen, it's pretty hard, pretty easy to walk on. But this still has a lot of frost. It's a little loose on the top and wet and slippery. And so you go from frozen mud to thawed mud to dried mud. So that's a pretty good example. The trail conditions that you'll run into. So over here it gets really bad. See, you got some standing water there. This is both a ATV trail and a snowmobile trail. So in this particular section of trail is one of the main trails and a connector to several other trails, so it gets a lot. This one gets heavy traffic in here. So a lot of those tire ruts are there from last fall that froze up and then got covered with snow, and the snowmobiles have gone over it. But this mud in here, this gets pretty soupy, and you can sink down 2-3 inches or more, and if there's a lot of water on it, you can even sink down. So I don't care to walk through that stuff at all. You can slip and fall in it. You can get your boots stuck in it. If you're wearing low-cut trail runners, you actually can have your boot or your shoe get pulled off. So now here's a spot up here. This again gets some sun, so this is pretty good. This is mostly dried out. It's a little soft. And then we run into a wet, muddy spot again with the edges. Again, an unstable monorail. You can break that up. And now we're back on the regular monorail. So this area, I said in another video, you may or may not have watched, we're about at 300 feet elevation here. So many of the mountains are up in the 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 foot range. So up there, even now, there's the trails will have up to 2 feet or more of this kind of snow. It's usually packed down. The winter hikers usually wear snowshoes, so they'll pack it down with the snowshoes. So they've got a pretty good base of as I said, up to 2 feet of really packed snow. It'll take some time for that to melt off, partly because it's packed and partly because it's not going to get very warm temperatures yet still. Since that snowstorm I mentioned, the high temperatures have only been in the 30s here, and the lows at night have been in the teens. Now it's supposed to warm up, get into the 40s, then into the 50s, which is more typical mid-April weather here. But we've got some branches down, so those have been buried all winter. Actually, that looks like that's a tree root. So that's solid. That's in the ground. That's one of these trees around here, or over there. That's one of the roots that is a little bit above the surface. So that's something you can, because it's solid, it's stuck in on both ends. You catch your toe on that, you could trip over it. So that's another hazard of spring hiking, is you get all these little roots that start popping up, and if you're not careful, you can trip it. So now the roots are still there in the summer, of course, but you're used to, you can see them way off in the distance. You can see the whole trail. This one just is attached on one end. So, and we'll talk about that when we do some more of the summer hiking videos. We'll go over all the little hazards that are on the trail and what to do to either avoid them or negotiate them and so forth. So now this area gets a lot of, this is very open here. So this part of the trail, this used to be that loose wet mud like I showed you before, but now this is all dried out. So this is great. I like this. But now we're going down. This is a low area, so this collects a lot more water. It's going to take a lot more time for this to dry out. So you see the mud. You see some footprints in here. Standing water and so forth. So so what I do is I wait until, well, down here I walk every day. This is where I walk the dogs. So I will come down here. I'll try to stay in the driest area as much as possible. But on the mountain hikes that I go on, where I'm going to be gone for 8 to 10 hours, I don't want to spend 8 to 10 hours fighting with the monorail and the loose mud and the water and the hidden roots and all that stuff. That's just not fun to me. So I monitor the trail conditions. That'll be another topic we cover in another video. How to check on current trail conditions, and I monitor those and see what kind of condition they're in before I decide to head out. So the higher elevations will take long, they'll be longer in the cycle. They go through the same cycle. They pack snow, gets down to monorail, stable, then turns into unstable, and turns into frozen mud, thawed mud, wet mud, and then dry mud. So that cycle is the same, but it just comes earlier or later in the season, depending on how high up you are and how open the trail is, and a number of other variables. So, in northern New England, that would be Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, that's generally going to be mid to late May before the mountains get into that stable, dry trail conditions. There are some exceptions. As I said, some trails are more open to the sun, they'll dry out quicker. So if you wanted to go hiking earlier than that, you have limited options. You might have to stick to the local park and so forth, which isn't a bad idea to get started. But if you're going to do mountain hiking and you don't care to go in this kind of condition, then that's what you have to do. Now they do have, I forgot to add, many people that hike in this on a regular basis will get some gear to attach to their hiking boots that have what they call traction control on it. So there's all kinds of different spikes, micro spikes, crampons, that kind of stuff, basically, and they have all different kinds of designs. So it's like tire chains for your feet, or studded tires for your feet. So then you're not slipping quite as much. You can still slip on the icy sections, but that's an additional expense. It's an additional hassle. And for me, I have a problem with one of my knees. And even if you're walking on pretty solid ground, your foot isn't making 100% firm plant. Your foot moves just slightly, either when you're planting it or when you're pushing off. And in my case, I did that. I went on a 2-hour walk a couple of years ago on this stuff exactly like it is here. And when I got done, I had a little soreness in my knee. It developed into much bigger pain. Make a long story short, I wound up going to an orthopedist and had to have a cortisone shot because all of that little small slipping on the ice had caused severe inflammation in my knee just from the constant little tweaking. So just that little bit of a difference in each step was enough to damage my knee, and so something to think about, particularly if you're an elderly person. Your joints aren't as strong as they were when you were younger, and they might not hold up to that kind of even minor stress. None of those steps hurt, but it was just a little tiny bit of a torque each time. They eventually added up to a major pain. So, come to a muddy section here. I'm trying to figure out what the driest path is. So that will give you a little bit of an idea of what the spring conditions are. And even sometimes in late May, early June, if you're real high up in the mountains, you'll still run into some of this stuff. So now you know some of the terms that you might see in the trail reports. You get an idea of what the conditions are like. I have no traction control. I have no problem walking in this, but this is only like a 15 or 20 minute walk. You do this for 8 to 10 hours, you will notice a big difference in how your legs feel compared to a completely dry, clear trail. So hope that's helpful, and peace, love, kindness.